From Studio 1A in Tampa, Florida, comes a talk show that really feels your pain and tells you like it is. We love America and all that freedom-loving Americans want to protect. Live from coast to coast and on your radio, it's For the People with Keith Allen.
We'll help you survive this thing called life. We're for the people. Whatever your source of stress or strife, for the people is there.
Well, hello, Mr. and Mrs. America. I am Keith Allen and proudly welcoming you to this Thursday's edition of For the People. On a June the 29th, 2017, we're just about out of June and getting ready to celebrate the 4th of July coming up just right around the corner. And I was going through the morning papers and kind of going through some more stories and thinking through some of the show because, you know, we're doing a 2-hour show. So I really have to scour the papers, the wires, watch the news shows. I mean, that's just the job of a talk show host. You know, we have to do this and we have to at least appear to actually be in the know. But this has to do with pets in 4th of July. Just a little alert. They say that the Big Bang might be a thrill for you, but not your dog. And I have 2 dogs, and I was just thinking, we have lightning storms, severe ones, actually, in Tampa, where I do the broadcast from, and the Chihuahua, she doesn't know what to do with herself. You know, she buries herself under the couch or in your arms. I mean, she gets nervous. But think about that for the 4th of July with your pet. You may not want your pet around. According to pet psychologists, it's not good. It could give them diarrhea, could make them vomit, and could also make them dehydrated. And why is that? Well, dogs pant. They don't sweat, as you know. They pant to cool off, and by doing so, they can dehydrate themselves because they're so scared. They have anxiety. They're anxious. So you may want to kind of find a better place, a quieter place in the house, if all possible. And if you're in the Northeast, place where you have a basement or something like that, but they probably still hear it out of a window. But you may want to put maybe a stereo on or some white noise or something like that. But I'm just thinking about your pets today. I mean, I am thinking about politics, but hey, don't you think it's better to take care of your pet at this point? I mean, they do so much for you, don't they? Put a smile on your face and they lick you all over. Yeah, not in the mouth, not in the mouth. Like anywhere else, but not there. That's that's a little nasty. Well, General McMaster, he's been working on a plan, and he's getting ready to propose a plan for North Korea. And it's getting ready to present this to the president because, as you're probably aware, the president is getting ready to sit down with South Korea's new president to meet with them. And I am really confused about the THAAD missile defense system in South Korea, where the president didn't want it there, and because now they want to do environmental tests and things like that. I'm thinking to myself, you're not going to have any environment. I mean, you idiot. I'm sorry. You have to do tests. This guy wants to launch missiles. You're not going to have it in environmental studies. You want a country, don't you? I mean, this is the lunacy, folks, that we often try to shed light on. The lunacy of the left. And this is the lunacy stuff. It's crazy. But anyway, hopefully the THAAD missile system actually is deployed because it looks like there is mounting tensions. And our general doesn't think that there's going to be any great concessions with the talks. McMaster's comments come, a day before Trump is scheduled to meet with South Korean President Moon Jae-in. And he's the new leader. And he's vowed to stand firmly with Trump in North Korea, which is great, downplaying his past advocacy for a softer approach towards the isolated regime. So we'll see how the two actually get along. But things are getting heavy over there. Now, it's reminded, and we've talked about this before, many people know with the DMZ, in South Korea, we got 250 troops a lot of our American people, not to mention a country full of people. A very interesting person that knows something about that region. And let me give you his credentials before we hear from him. It's Dean Chang. He's the Senior Research Fellow for East Asia, studies at the Heritage Foundation. Basically, we want to ask him, how dangerous is the situation to the region?
And this is, again, where the failure of communication. You have states where there are 42%.
That's not the one we want, the other one here. This is Dean Chang. That's okay. Here it is, Dean Chang.
At the end of the day, Seoul, the capital of South Korea, the largest city, is within artillery range of North Korea. And North Korea knows it. They've forward deployed much of their military to hold the capital of South Korea at risk. Acting against North Korea opens the possibility of turning the capital of South Korea into a butcher's.
Okay, we want to hear that one more time, and just to set this up, what happens, and folks, listen to this very, very carefully of what he says, and the tone of his voice, very important. Here he is, Dean Chang, once more.
At the end of the day, Seoul, the capital of South Korea, the largest city, is within artillery range of North Korea. And North Korea knows it. They've forward deployed much of their military to hold the capital of South Korea at risk. Acting against North Korea opens the possibility of turning the capital of South Korea into a butcher's.
Okay, that's the realism of it. Our troops know it, our government knows it, he knows it, researchers know it, but still it's inevitable. So diplomacy, when you want diplomacy to work, but it fails, just like Dennis Rodman, I call it Dennis Rodman diplomacy. How did that work out? This is kind of an interesting exchange, but he does comment about even Jimmy Carter. Here we go.
People don't see the good side about that country, but I think people don't see him as a friendly guy. But if you actually talk to him,
so when you see him, do you see a different guy?
Oh yeah.
Does he smile? Does he does he talk? Is he open?
No, we always talk, right? We sing karaoke. It's not fun, ride horses.
I can only imagine what Kim Jong-un thinks of the United States as he chats with Dennis Rodman. I mean, he's got to be wondering sort of, who is this man? And what is his relationship with the American government?
But it gets better.
I think when we take a look at the sad history of private diplomatic efforts with North Korea, they've generally proven disruptive. Jimmy Carter goes to North Korea and basically forced Bill Clinton's hand into the 1994 agreed framework by claiming to have grasped peace out of the jaws of war. When in fact what happened was he basically created the situation that eventually saw North Korea developing uranium enrichment and helped, I think, lead to where North Korea is today, working on a nuclear weapon that can reach the United States.
And even with all the Barack Obama and John Kerry stuff over in Iran was given money to be able to still continue, and there still is activity over there, still wanting to pursue the bomb, and there's still activity over there. It's these bleeding liberal hearts that allow these people to get away with it. And it's this type of diplomacy, which I call Dennis Rodman diplomacy, that brings back Warmbier in a coma, okay? I know that Rodman didn't do it, but he thinks it's some kind of big success that he somehow, because of the mention, that Dennis Rodman, and yet that is a very interesting thought that he had. That's Dean Chang. Of what else he thinks of America, being that, is that a representation of how America operates? And this is the psyche of America, that this is the mindset of Dennis Rodman. It's like, who is this guy, this basketball player? I mean, I know that Ung knows this guy is absolutely harmless. This guy doesn't have a PhD, certainly, and Ung is intellectually, definitely, I would say, much more gifted there, believe it or not, because Ung actually went to school in Switzerland. Academically, he actually has a brain. He's just a loose cannon. But again, it's this kind of lunacy that's got us in this position. And unfortunately, as I'm looking over these reports and seeing how they're sitting down and the mounting presence right now in that region, it seems like we are getting ready for a war. because all options are on the table right now. And, folks, I just don't know. I predicted this summer there's going to be some kind of showdown because of the activity right now with the site and more launches that are predicted in the next 2 weeks. There's going to be more launches. China doesn't seem like they're doing anything really to negotiate with the North. And the prospects appear very unlikely, and it's getting very frustrating for Donald Trump over Beijing's levels of economic pressures on the North. And it's not very, very good. Now, Moon told the Washington Post that North Korea leader Kim Jong-un is unreasonable and very dangerous, and that pressure was necessary. But Moon said sanctions alone would not solve the problem. There you go. And dialogue was needed under the right conditions. Moon's government has ordered an environmental review, like I said, before allowing the additional launchers for the terminal. That's what THAAD stands for, by the way, Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System. Say that real fast. High Altitude Area Defense System. South Korean officials say that does not mean they are placcating China or reversing the decision, which risks arguing over Washington for the THAAD system. It's just they just want to know what the environmental footprint's going to be. Still curious, still wanting to know. Yeah, is that tree going to die if you actually put that launcher right there? Come on, folks. I would be really nervous to know that you're just a stone throw away in your backyard and that you don't want those launches. I mean, if it wasn't for us being there with the amount of troop levels there, they would not be able to defend themselves at all anyway. But I guess this is just a way to be able to have some type of say. And, to a certain degree they should. But, geez, who's going to come to your defense? Who's going to fight for you? It's going to be American blood. I think that the talks should be much more productive, I would imagine. But there's a lot to be considered in the region for sure. I don't want war. I don't think any Americans want war because there's bound to be casualties and a bloodbath. And the South would be able to, they would get hit really, really hard. And then China would be drug into it. We would be drug into it. Both Koreas would be drug into it. But the liberation of the poor people in North Korea, I mean, there has to be some type of happy ending eventually. Somebody's got to be courageous enough to get in there. And I don't know if you bring in the best commando team to go in there and take out the regime, or like I have mentioned, a amazing, when I say amazing, shock and awe with all our bomber planes and wherever they predict that this guy is and his top leaders, to hit all those places and hit it so hard, military bases, I mean, it's just, it would have to happen quickly, decisively, and that's what they're putting together right now. I mean, they're literally putting together a war plan for that particular eventuality. So I'm just saying, Americans, be warned, this could be the reality. And, the prospect of liberating somebody that evil for the things that he does to his people, I'm more excited about this than I ever was with Saddam Hussein. And even though he was crazy and gassing his people, hurting his people, but when it comes to the North, these are the people, to me, that we should be concentrating on right now, because we know a lot about how they operate, and these people are evil. If I ever saw it, if I ever knew what evil was, that is hell on earth. And anybody that's escaped from there, the stories that they tell will curdle your blood. It is just unreal. It will give you nightmares to research. If you research what goes on, the inhumane practices that go on. But here's the interesting thing about the whole thing, and China, cozying up and being very reluctant not to want to help them out at all because they are trade partners. They've been trade partners, okay? And you get forced labor that goes into China to help the Chinese, okay? So they have been fine with the practices, and why would China possibly do that? Well, you know about China, right?